Before we get started on the panels, I'd like to introduce AWR Hawkins. He's a weekly contributor to Andrew Breitbart's Big Sites, a columnist for Pajamas Media, and a contributor to redcountry.com. He holds a PhD in U.S. military history from Texas Tech University. His pro-Second Amendment columns are read nationally, and we are very proud to have him here today to talk to us about the media and its relationship with the Second Amendment. Please welcome AWR Hawkins.
Hello. Hello. Just a way of clarification. Yeah, I only write for Breitbart. Other than that, that intro is pretty spot on. But yeah, I write for Breitbart, have a PhD in military history from Texas Tech, have a podcast that we do at Breitbart, Bullets with AWR Hawkins, and just pretty much stay busy writing on gun issues all the time. That's all I do at Breitbart. Everybody there has a groove they stay in, and all I write is guns. I love it, but sometimes it means I work 17 hours a day. That's what I did after the Parkland shooting. I did 17 hours a day, 7 days a week for about 2.5 weeks. But you got to do that to turn back that push. So that's how it goes. But it's good to be here with you all. Mike asked me to speak about the media and the media's relationship to the Second Amendment, which is what I'm going to do, but I am going to differentiate between establishment media and what I call the people's media. When I think about the people's media, I think about outlets like ours, Breitbart. I think even about this aggregation sites like Drudge. I think about the Daily Caller. I think about those outlets as the people's media. When I think about establishment media, I think about CNN, all the Sunday morning talk shows that no one watches except for me because I have to as part of my job, and the LA Times and New York Times. Those are establishment media outlets. Now, the people's media highlights how foolish it is to mandate that teachers stay in rooms all day without a gun. That's what we do at the people's media. It's kind of silly that they're forced to be setting ducks. We highlight how important national reciprocity is, that it's kind of foolish that I can carry a gun on my hip in Arizona, Oklahoma, Texas, and Colorado, but when I hit this state, I got to put it in a lockbox. We talk about how silly that is in the people's media. We do the same thing when we cover the Hearing Protection Act. We stress the fact you got to be stupid to not recognize that something that drops decibels to the degree that a suppressor does must be good for your hearing. Now, doctors, of course, sign off on it too, but we report that stuff. The establishment media looks the other way. And so those are how I draw big lines between the established media and the people's media. You know, it was here in California in October, I believe it was 2017, that Jerry Brown signed a bill that guaranteed teachers can't shoot back if they're attacked. I remember when he signed that. Our headline at Breitbart was, Jerry Brown signs bill ensuring teachers cannot shoot back if attacked. That title's 100% accurate. It teed some people off. I got all these hate emails and people call the office and they want us to change it. Well, why would we change it? But that's the difference between us and the establishment media. We're reporting the facts. We're trying to report the facts in a way that you figure out what they're trying to do on the other side. All right? Do you think CNN would ever use a headline like that? No, never. So what CNN, MSNBC, or any of the other ones would do, and I saw them do it, they'll report that, well, what the Democrats are doing is they're trying to get the guns off campus. That's what they're trying to do, is be sure. But what they don't tell you is the guns they're taking away are the guns the teacher was going to use to protect your kids. That's what they don't tell you. So that's what we do tell you, all right? Now, here's the deal. We, in the people's media, we are corrective, in my mind. We're corrective to the establishment media. Groups like yours are a corrective, too. Pro-gun groups are a corrective, too. But I'm just saying these are the differences. Now, listen, CNN is so biased. This is going further into what Mike asked me to talk about, the relationship between the media and the Second Amendment. CNN is so biased against the Second Amendment that they have made statements that are even more egregious than the claims that they made about California Democrats getting guns off campus. For example, on January 14th, 2017, less than a week after the Florida shooting, CNN claimed that less than a week after the Hearing Protection Act was put forward, CNN claimed that Republicans were trying to get rid of a $200,000 tax on Class 3 firearms. I'm trying not to laugh. These people are so ignorant. They're so ignorant. It's a $200 tax, and we are trying to get rid of it. Why should I have to pay the government a tax to buy a firearm accessory? And on top of that, why should I have to do hardly anything I do to buy a firearm accessory? It's not even a firearm, it's an accessory. A suppressor, does it have a trigger? Does it shoot bullets? I mean, these people are so out there. All they can do is they try to demonize the Hearing Protection Act by saying, oh, the Republicans are trying to move a $200,000 tax, and they're trying to take away background checks for suppressors. Well, here's the deal. Number one, I don't think there should be a background check for a suppressor. That's stupid, but there is one. And the Republicans aren't trying to take it away. They're trying to take away the tax, but keep the background check in place. We covered that at Breitbart. CNN, though, they're too busy demonizing things. And that's what you need to see. When you think about what Mike asked me to talk about, the relationship between the media and the Second Amendment, it's one of demonized demagogue, demonized demagogue, demonized demagogue. And they want to scare you and shame you into supporting things that are pro-Second Amendment. Now listen, CNN is so biased around the Second Amendment that they make outlandish claim after outlandish claim, all under the guise of real news coverage. But you know this and I know this, it's not real. It's fake. And I'm not just saying that because Trump said it. It just is. It's fake. Okay? Ask yourself this question. When was the last time that you saw an establishment media outlet, and again, CNN, MSNBC, any of them, when was the last time you saw them cover a story on the number of times a gun is used for self-defense every year? I can't remember a time that in depth one of the big outlets did that, all right? I don't know of it ever happening. Now, while you're at it, ask this. When was the last time you heard Chuck Todd, that great Sunday morning star, talk about it, right? Chuck, I mean, they just don't talk about these things. Now, here's what we need to think about. When I think about how evident the facts are, it's unbelievable. You look at Gary Kleck, who's a criminologist, Florida State criminologist. He started doing research in the 1990s. He has found and maintained for over 20 years a minimum of 760,000 defensive handgun uses a year. That's a staggering number. Anytime I say that number on TV or on the radio, I can tell people think I just messed up and they're waiting for me to correct myself. 760,000? And that's a minimal number. That's academic work. It's not a guess. It's not opinion. You would think that in America, a news outlet that claims to really be a news outlet would cover that at least once. 760,000. I don't know if CNN ever covering it. At least once, wouldn't they mention that? See, they can't do it because it goes against their template. It goes against the template that is to trash the Second Amendment and to shame gun owners into silence. Again, I've never heard Jake Tapper mention it. I never heard him mention it one time. Now, you have to think about this, and I've said it. I've said it already, but I'm going to say it again. That figure, 760,000, comes from academic work, not opinion, not a partisan group. I've tried to interview Gary Kleck. He won't let me interview him, not because he doesn't like me, but because he doesn't want to be tied to any partisan outlet. I don't even know if the man owns a gun. CNN won't report the number. So there's part of what you need to see when you think about the relationship between the establishment media and the Second Amendment. Now, the establishment media's anti-Second Amendment bias, though, isn't altogether lost on academicians. You have an academician, James Allen Fox, at Northeastern University. Fox does some great work, and what he does is he goes ahead and assumes, okay, the establishment media is going to pervert anything I do. And so he goes ahead and works their perversion into the study. And he does that same thing with news reports. Like Fox shows this. What I'm going to say, you're going to think I'm making a mistake. I'm not. Fox shows there are fewer school shootings now than there were in the 1990s. He doesn't do this because his coffee was bad this morning or he had a bad meal last night. Been studying this for years, decades. Fewer school shootings now than there were in the 1990s. Now, if you were to go to any airport where CNN is playing 24/7, no one would believe that. They think you're crazy if you said that. But Fox shows in, I think it was 92 to 93, 0.55 students per 1 million, 0.55 students per 1 million were shot and killed. In 2014 to 2015, that number dropped to 0.15 per 1 million students. Now you think about that, I know those are cold, hard facts and they may be boring to you, but what's good about them is they are cold, hard facts. Remember our second president, John Adams? Facts may be stubborn things, but whatever may be your passions or whatever may be your wishes, your inclinations, or the dictates of your passion, it cannot change the state of facts and evidence. It's very important to remember, regardless of the optional reality that the media paints, reality, the real reality, the metaphysical is, there are fewer school shootings now than there used to be. Now, how can that be? Well, what they do is they cover these things. Here's what Fox figures in. He figures whereas a school shooting may have once upon a time not even been reported, unless it was huge, or been reported and the next story had been taken up as other things are, now a news outlet will cover that story for a day, then for a week, then for a month, then for over a month, as they've done with the shooting in Florida, which was horrible. I'm not denying it was horrible, but see, they just hold on to it, and they keep it in the media cycle so that every time you turn on your TV, it's like another shooting has occurred. And then it's easy for you to believe things are out of hand. We got to ban something. We got to do something. And that's what Fox talks about when he takes this into his research. And he says that it is the impression that media gives us that makes us believe there are more shootings, not fewer. Now, again, I don't remember Mr. Tingles there, Chris Matthews, talking about this. I don't think he even knows who James Allen Fox is, and that's a shame, because that would be the one thing Matthews has reported that was worth hearing if he would report this study. Now, here's what you have to understand, and as we get a little deeper thinking about this, the establishment media is basically a surrogate for the Democrat Party. That's how you have to understand it. They don't like to hear that. I know George Stephanopoulos and the rest of them wouldn't like to hear it, but it's just a fact. They are surrogates for the Democrat Party. In other words, they deliver the Democrat Party's message on gun control, and they do it day after day after day. All right? Now, here's what we learn. If you listen to them, and I'm just putting it all together, if I listen to everything they've said, if gun control fails, as it is done in Chicago and Baltimore and St. Louis and New Orleans and Washington, D.C., if it fails there, the solution is more gun control. If gun control fails, as it did at the Parkland, Florida school or at Sandy Hook or at the Virginia Tech University, then the solution is more gun control. If teachers are mandated to be unarmed and are shot and killed while unarmed, as they were in Parkland, Newtown, Rosenberg, Georgia, if this happens, Rosenberg, Oregon, if this happens, then the solution is to keep teachers unarmed and pass more gun control. You see the theme? Surrogates for the Democrat Party. Now look, it's ugly. The establishment media is ugly and they're leftist to the core, but this is reality. It's what they are. And you got to figure that out, all right? Now, I'm a firm believer that it was the establishment media's role in surrogate service to the Democrat Party that led the way for CNN, and I hate to say this, you're going to think I make a mistake, but I'm not. CNN called the AR-15 a full semi-automatic firearm. I'm not lying. When I typed this speech, by the way, I reread that line a million times, and I already reported it at Breitbart. I know it's true, but it just doesn't fit logically. A full semi-automatic firearm. Now, that's like telling me that you're going to run on a platform of a graduated flat tax, or that you have a fully half-empty glass of water, or a completely finished, half-done home. See, none of that makes sense. It's gibberish. But CNN will spew this gibberish because they said this about the time that Dianne Feinstein, who your state gave us, Dianne Feinstein and Senator Chris Murphy, were pushing an all-out ban on AR-15s and other assault weapons. And this was part of the demonization approach. We'll demonize these. We'll find the grandma and grandpa who are a little nervous but haven't made up their mind yet, and we'll throw in that word automatic. Now it's a full semi-automatic. And the goal is to scare them into supporting gun control. That is the work the surrogate does. Think about it this way. Any of you who are boxing fans will get it. What I like to think about is what the establishment media does is this constantly. Just constantly throwing a jab, softening you up, trying to soften me up, constantly just dabbing at us. Every time you waste your time and watch CNN, MSNBC, or listen to Chuck Todd or Jake Tapper or the rest of them, every time you do that, they're doing that too. And it's so Feinstein and Schumer and the rest of them can come along with this and finish you off. They're softening you up with the lies so Feinstein and Schumer can come along once you're ready and pass the gun control. That is what the establishment media does. You don't believe me? And I hear a lot of you. I know a lot of you do. But for those of you who go, well, they still may have not meant to say, full semi-automatic. For those of you who think that way, I want you to think about this. About the same time that CNN described the full semi-automatic, CBS News ran a story, not making this up. They ran a story nationally. They have no shame. They ran a story that said it's easier to get an assault rifle than to buy diarrhea medication in bulk. Not making it up. I'm not going to ask anybody to raise hands, but who buys diarrhea medication in bulk? Now, see, I can understand. I could actually understand if you went into CVS and said, I'd like a pallet of Imodium AD. It's going to take a while. But if you go in there like a regular person, you grab a box and you leave, what's the round trip on that, 2 minutes? If the wife's in the car, you don't even cut the engine off. You're in, you're out, right? Now, here's the deal. I go to buy an AR-15. I go in the store. I have to find the one I want. I find the one I want. I give it to the guy. I fill out ATF Form 4473. I hand him my ID. He calls the FBI. I wander around the store, look at magazines and ammo and stuff, and then he calls me back when it's done, background check's finished, pay for the gun, then walk out. It takes a half hour, 45 minutes sometime. It can be done quicker. But, well, see, no, here it's even different. They don't take that into account. Here you have waiting periods and everything else. But I'm saying where there are no waiting periods. What I'm saying is CBS just made stuff up. That's what they did. And they ended up retracting some of their story when we called attention to it. But the point is this. It's just more of that surrogate work. They're just jabbing you, softening you up. They want you to go, that's kind of ridiculous. You can buy a gun that quick. That's what they want you to do, and they want you to support more and more gun control, okay? Again, we have to understand this. When the establishment media speaks, they're not trying to make sense. And I've heard people say this before. It's the only reason I'm bringing it up. I'm not saying any of you would do it. I've heard people say, well, that doesn't make any sense. And they feel like they got a moral victory for recognizing that. It's not supposed to make sense. No one cares. The establishment media isn't trying to make sense. They're trying to win converts. You got to understand that. It's warfare. They don't care if they make sense. And you go, well, like you could sit down with Jake Tapper and say, Jake, that's illogical. He doesn't care. He's not trying to be logic. He's not trying to be logical. He's doing this. And he's just trying to soften you up so that Schumer and the rest of them can come past gun control. So we got to get past just trying to figure out how ignorant they are. We got to understand they're devious and they have a ploy. They're surrogates for the Democrat Party. And the relationship between the establishment media and the Second Amendment is one of the establishment media taking more and more and more of an active role in securing gun control. Again, one more point in case you still don't believe me. About the time that CNN called the AR-15 a full semi-automatic, which was about the same time CBS said buying an AR-15 is easier than buying a bulk supply of diarrhea medicine, about that same time, the Los Angeles Times said if we would ban AR-15s, there wouldn't be any more mass shootings. Now, that's stupid. That's real stupid. But see, what they did is they described the AR-15 as a quote-unquote mass shooting gun. So see, we're all the old people. And if you're elderly, I'm not making fun of you. I'm saying this is how the establishment media thinks about you. They think if we say that, it'll scare grandma and grandpa to death and they'll support gun control. And so that's what they do. You got to understand this. Virginia Tech, April 16th, 32 people. Almost twice as many as were killed in Florida a month ago. He killed 32 people with a handgun, right? At the Fort Hood shooting, November 5, 2009, guy killed 13 with a handgun. They had another Fort Hood shooting in April 2014. Guy killed 2, I think maybe 3, with a handgun. The Gabby Giffords shooting that has spawned such a gun control push, a guy killed 6 people with a handgun. I can just keep going. I could fill up the rest of my time giving you examples. What I could then back up and do is that every example I just listed, those killers passed a background check too. Background checks are BS, but you know that. That's a different topic. But the push for background checks is just a push for control. That's it. So anyway, that's an aside. I don't want to get messed up here. But so the Los Angeles Times says that if we would ban AR-15s, there wouldn't be any more mass shootings, really. It's so silly. We did some work at Breitbart. I believe the year was 2011, but I know that murders with rifles of any kind were such a minimal, it was laughable that Democrats were going after them. I know that in 2016, I remember from the FBI crime stats, in 2016, over 4 times as many people were stabbed to death as were shot with rifles of any kind, shot and killed. Over 4 times as many people, I'm going to say it again so soak in. Over 4 times as many people were stabbed to death as were shot and killed with rifles of any kind. Now, assault weapons only make up a very small slither of rifles of any kind. So the number of stabbings versus the number of killings with, say, an AR-15 would have been unbelievably out of whack. It would have been a gazillion times over. Who knows how many times over it would have been. But the media is so in this for the Democrats that the Los Angeles Times will say, if we would just ban assault weapons, there wouldn't be any more mass shootings. Yeah, whatever. Again, it does not matter that their stories don't make sense. I know that's a double negative, but it's the only way to say it. It does not matter that the stories don't make sense. It does not matter that the stories are illogical. It does not matter that the stories are only partly correct. Doesn't matter. They're not going here for journalism awards. They're going for gun control. That's what they're going for. And they're trying to figure out with this constant jabbing, which ones of you are soft enough that you'll give in. And when we leave this room in the airport, they're trying to figure out how many of the travelers are soft enough that they'll give in. That's all they're doing. That is what the establishment of media does. And as I say, they are doing this for the Democrat Party. Now, let me tell you this. Let me word it this way. The establishment media's stories are fake because they are chosen and crafted to accomplish an end, which is to further the Democrats' agenda, rather than to fulfill the honest obligations of reporting the news. Let me just say it again. The establishment media's stories are fake because they are chosen and crafted to accomplish an end, which is to further the Democrats' agenda, rather than fulfill the honest obligation of reporting the news. You know, I wrote today on that kid, David Hogg, that Parkland shooting survivor. No one here would know his name if we had an honest media. And if you don't know his name, that's all right. Don't feel bad. But no one here would know his name if we had an honest media. But see, what's happened is Gabby Giffords' gun control group has picked him up. Mike Bloomberg's Everytown for Gun Safety has picked him up. They're helping to orchestrate all these meetings for him and for his fellow Parkland survivors, only the ones who are for gun control. But they're organizing all this, and then the media's falling right in line doing their work, giving him all the exposure they can give him to get the message out and to persuade us all that everybody is for gun control, everybody. The only people who aren't for gun control are the mean people who want to see kids die. That's what they're doing. Wouldn't even know who these kids were. These kids tell us what we ought to do, how we ought to vote, how we ought to raise our kids. None of them have kids. None of them can vote. None of them can legally buy a gun. They're telling us everything we want to know about all these things. See, in a rational world, we would say something like, hey, be quiet and go back to class, thanks. Amen. In a rational world, we would. But in a world run by an establishment media that can't wait to get one over on you, we're going to see these kids from now on until somebody finally gets the message we're not listening. And that message will only come through a victory, hopefully, November 18, when we're able to retain majorities in House and Senate. That's something like that is all that's going to stop this push. Because at that point, the establishment media will pivot and find a new way to push gun control. They'll realize the kids aren't working. Let me say this again. The establishment media's stories are fake because they are chosen and crafted to accomplish an end, which is to further the Democrats' agenda rather than fulfill the honest obligation of reporting the news. We, in the people's media, spend our days exposing and disproving the establishment media's claims. And we trust that doing this is a service to freedom because it is a way of presenting the whole story, most of which would never be reported if we as a nation had to rely on CNN to tell us anything. While protecting freedom in general, this is my personal hope. While protecting freedom in general, I hope that our role in the people's media protects the Second Amendment in particular. And for me, that's personal because my father he drilled it in me, that the Second Amendment exists to protect all the others. And so when we fight to expose CBS and NBC and CNN and the rest of them, I honestly sit behind my computer and I feel like, man, we're doing a service here. We're doing a service by exposing these rascals before they can destroy the one amendment that keeps us safe. Thank you guys for your time, for letting me speak to you. I appreciate it.
Without someone doing something about it, it's not going to get any better.